And the reason why we're going to raise it a little bit is because we're trying to upgrade the media ministry that we have here in the church. Our cameras give us some problems. I don't know if you've watched online, but the last 2 Sabbaths ago, I was watching the results from that this last week, and there's things out of focus, and and so forth. It's just hard to do a really good job with the equipment we have. So anything we have above what it costs us to produce those is going to go into that fund. Okay. So welcome back, everybody, including those who are watching online. And as I say, I was told to assure you that there's one family that's watching online tonight who have a couple of young men in their family that really liked your presentations. As a matter of fact, I think I was told to tell you also that they had fallen asleep in the car in between. They ate and they fell asleep, and their parents brought them in here, to kind of, I guess from what I heard, they were kind of sleepy. Guys, if you're listening. Anyway, I heard you were sleepy, and they just perked right up when you started talking. So it's a very interesting topic, and tonight, I can tell it's going to be interesting. Everybody's always interested in dinosaurs. So, Quint, thank you for being here. Would you please come and lead us in prayer?
All right.
I'm afraid you're going to have to fix your... Oh, there we go. I got it.
All right. Well, if you could bow your hearts with me. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this time that you've allotted for us to seek out your creation and see you in it. I thank you in Yeshua's name. Amen. Thank you. Okay, well, what I like to do at the beginning of each session is do a little review of the last session, so you have some idea and kind of get your mind remembering what we were talking about before. We last session, we talked about the geologic column. We said that it's only in one place in the world, and that's in textbooks. And we looked at various dating methods. We got very detailed in C14. We looked at circular reasoning and how they date the rocks from the fossils and the fossils from the rocks, and how they used index fossils and how many of the index fossils have difficulties too. Then we looked at how fossils were formed, and all the various things like crystals and fossils and oil, all of them can be formed very rapidly. There's no need for lots of time. Then we looked at a few different kinds of rocks. We're always told there's 3 kinds of rocks: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And we told you about a 4th kind, which was a genesis rock. So tonight we're going to look, I have a little video here. Hopefully the sound will work for us. It's a short clip because Dilbert and Dogbert always have something to say about evolution.
Push the button and see how a giant meteor caused the extinction of the dinosaurs.
Until this moment, I had trouble visualizing it.
Oh, I got to get by that page. Okay, kaboom, and the dinosaurs are dead. Well, one of the big differences between evolution and creation is that evolution talks about long, slow processes that cause what we see today. And we talk about catastrophism with creation, that there was a huge catastrophe, the flood. Well, it's interesting, when they talk about the dinosaurs going away, they talk about a meteor, which, by the way, that's a catastrophe. Now, they don't like to say the flood did it. They have to have their own catastrophes. So I just thought that was funny. Now, I know we want to talk about big dinosaurs, but let me start small. I'm going to talk about diatoms. Diatoms, they're about 2 millimeters in thickness, and they have a silica wall. Well, it's about 1/10 of the edge of a nickel. So they're pretty small. And if you take diatoms, and they have a number of different shapes. They're very beautiful when you look at them. But it's estimated it would take about 1,000 years for 1 inch of diatoms to stack up on the ocean floor. Okay, so it takes a long time to get very many diatoms. Well, diatoms, once they stack up in a big pile, you can get a thing called diatomaceous earth. And there's a whole bunch of uses for it. You can use it for filters, for paint, and, well, it's kind of like little pieces of glass, and you can use it as a insecticide. It's not poison. What it does is it scratches the surface of the bugs and it kills them. Now, it might kill earthworms too, so you're going to be careful with using diatomaceous earth. But nearby, just north of us, is a place called Lompoc, California. And in Lompoc, California, there's the largest diatomaceous earth quarry in the world. And there, they've had some very interesting things. For instance, in 1976, in Lompoc, California, they found the skeleton of a baleen whale buried in diatomaceous earth. There was also trillions. That's a really big number. We're used to millions and billions, but unless you're talking about the national debt, they usually don't talk about trillions. Trillions of fish fossils found in that diatomaceous earth. So it's just packed with all kinds of fossils. Now, the one funny thing about this particular whale is he happened to be standing on his tail. Now, let's just put some facts together here for a second. He's standing on his tail. All right, he dies. It takes 1,000 years for 1 inch of diatomaceous earth to stack up. That's about 500,000 years standing on his tail to get buried. We had learned a word last time, disarticulated. He's not disarticulated, so that means he had to be buried rapidly. All this stuff happened because, you see, well, let's look. Here's a chunk of diatomaceous earth as they quarry it. They kind of pound it up into a little powder when you buy it. But, okay, I thought where I was going somewhere else. All right, chalk. Chalk is another funny little thing. Over here in England, they have what they call the White Cliffs of Dover. And they're made entirely, well, almost entirely of chalk. You could go break a chunk off and go right on a blackboard. It's that kind of chalk. Chalk comes from the skeletal remains of green algae. Now, how did you get so much chalk of these algae together that you could form these huge cliffs of just chalk? There's so much chalk there that evolutionists have called the whole age of the Earth the Cretaceous age. Cretaceous, Creta, is chalk in Latin. They like to use Latin. It makes them feel important. Anyway, what we look at is as an example in the Bible. It talks about the flood and what might have caused all these things to gather together in one spot. So we have a huge flood throughout the world. And it says in Genesis 7:18, "And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters." You see, if you get waters all over the planet and you get this huge swirl of waves and stuff, it tends to kind of act a little bit like a washing machine, and different things kind of tend to stack together of the same type. So you get deposits of diatoms, you get deposits of chalk, and you get also like P.T. Barnum. I say P.T. Barnum. It's Barnum Brown in 1934 went into Wyoming, into the Bighorn Mountains. And there he found what he described as the concentration of the fossils was remarkable. They were like piled in like logs in a log jam. Now that's really interesting. He would use terminology of something stacked together because of water. The fossils were stacked like a log jam. Here's a picture of fossils stacked tightly together. Together. Yes, I shouldn't point back there. It doesn't help y'all any, huh? Well, one of the things that evolution predicts is that when we start with simple cells, single-cell creatures, that after a period of long time you could get multiple cells, invertebrates, vertebrates, on up into mammals. Basically, bigger, better, faster, stronger, smarter. Bigger, better, faster, smarter, stronger. That they could only happen over a long period of time. Now, I've heard people say that, oh, well, that's not what evolution does. Evolution doesn't favor size or complexity. However, you do need time to get size and complexity. So I wanted to look how things have gotten much more, much larger, but then all of a sudden something happened, and the past now has the largest things. So it's actually a problem that the flood really answers. Here we look at a 5.5-foot penguin and very large dragonflies. Here's a spider. I actually wouldn't want to see it. His body is about a foot long. That's a big spider. And now we have hyraxes today, but they had hyraxes that were 4 feet long. So that's a big critter. We had a bird that if it stood up would probably be 8 or 10 feet tall, but it flies, it has like 22-foot wingspan. That bird could literally carry you away. And they have a rhinoceros had a hornless rhinoceros that its back was about 18 feet tall. You know, we think of dinosaurs as being large, but there were types of every species that were very large. I'm not sure that we really get that picture that everything was large. Here we have a ground sloth. The modern tree sloth is about 2 feet in size. This is a ground sloth that's 20 feet in size. That's a big sloth. Here's a 12-foot turtle that's so much larger than any turtles we see today. It's still a turtle. We have a bear that on all fours, he's 9 feet tall. And when he stands up, 20 feet tall bear. I don't know how high the ceiling is, but that's about 20 feet. I don't want to run into this boy. Now, in Texas and in Arkansas now, there are armadillos. And we can hit them with our car sometimes if we're not watching, and we squash them on the road. Well, here's a 7-foot armadillo, and I just don't know who's going to win. Is that a problem, running into him? Now, they've seen dragonflies. Here's a fossil dragonfly. It's 3-foot wingspan. And I don't know, I hit a dragonfly ever so often with my car. Well, they found dragonflies with a 5-foot wingspan. I'm not sure. He might be coming through the glass. Well, they have some bigger creatures, like the pterodactyl. I don't know if you get the idea how big the pterodactyl really was. It was 30-foot wide wingspan. That's a big bird. And actually, they had leathery wings as opposed to feathers, so I'm not sure it's actually a bird. And they had a shark there that was 60 foot long that could have jaws for breakfast. And a 48-foot crocodile, or alligator, I'm not sure. 48 feet. You see a little guy standing in front of him? He'd be gone. Now we have there's a number of creatures that look similar to this. There's the Edmontosaurus, there's the Brachiosaurus, there's a whole bunch of them. I don't know if you knew there's no such thing as a brontosaurus. So you can't have a brontosaurus burger. So there's no such thing. It's actually a mistake. What they found, the body of one creature and the head of another, and they stuck them together and they called it a brontosaurus, and then they realized later it was actually two different creatures, so there's no brontosaurus. There's a brachiosaurus. Anyway, this one in the picture there is called an ultrasaurus. And he is 30 feet high at the back and 120 foot long. That's a big creature. So, what happened? Why were all these huge species destroyed? When were they destroyed? Well, let's take a look a little bit at that. First, we have to ask the question, were dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden? Were dinosaurs on the ark? Are there dinosaurs in the Bible? Well, if you go to Job, you find that Job has a really hard time. His family is destroyed, most of it. All his herds are taken away. He gets sores all over his body. And he's complaining to God and to some of his wonderful friends that maybe this wasn't supposed to happen to him. He was a little bit unjustified that he should get all these bad things come to him. And so we're going to start when God starts talking to him. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Now gird up thy loins like a man. Man up. For I will demand of thee, and answer thou me." So Job is asking the question, why is this happening to me? And God says, well, hold it. You answer me first. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Where were you when I created everything? Now, when God asks a question, He is not looking for information, right? He knows it already. So what's He looking to do? He's trying to raise Job's awareness. Who he is and who God is. Now he asks a whole series of questions, but I want to look at a couple of the questions because I think they're really interesting. One of them was, "Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea?" And again, we have the situation that springs in the sea. We didn't even know there were springs in the sea until 1976. God knew. Where is the way where light dwelleth? Now that's a really interesting question because lately scientists have been discovering that light acts very strange. It's really funny. In reality, we have two kinds of things. We have waves, like you see a ripple in water, and we have particles. Well, light kind of acts like both. And it's very confusing. Is it a particle or is it a wave? Well, here God says it has a way. I just think it's very interesting the way that question is asked. Another question, by what way is the light parted which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? Well, here it is saying, and this is a really old book of the Bible, that light controls the wind. Now, how modern is that concept? Now we know that heat rises and the heat's caused by the sunshine coming down on the earth, and it controls all the weather pretty much on our planet. Now this is the question I really wanted to get to. "Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee." Now y'all remember that Behemoth was made with man at the same time. "He eateth grass as an ox." Now I have to ask the question, well, what's a behemoth? Well, if you go to some Bibles, they'll have a center reference. And they'll say things like, supposed to be either the elephant or the hippopotamus. I've even read that it's supposed to be a whirlwind or a whirlpool, behemoth. Well, let's read a little further and see if we can find out a little more about behemoth. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and the força is in the navel of his belly. Elephants have a big belly. Hippopotamus has a big belly. Brontosaurus, Brachiosaurus has a big belly. He has a big belly. We'll read a little further. It says, he moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinew of his stones are wrapped together. Well, that tail doesn't look like a cedar. That tail doesn't look like a cedar. That tail looks like a cedar tree. His bones are as strong as pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. Now, this is a picture of a Brachiosaurus toe bone. Now, Brachiosauruses have a big, heavy-duty toe bone because they have a big, heavy-duty leg. They have a big, heavy-duty leg because they weigh about 100 tons. About as much as 14 school buses. That is a big, heavy-duty creature. Here's another question that was asked of Job. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower down? A little bit later it says, mess with him and you won't mess with anybody anymore ever again. It's, what's a Leviathan? Well, we won't go into that one, but there's another creature that is not normal today. Well, what do we call these creatures that are big and scary? Well, about in 1841, Sir Richard Owen coined the term dinosaur, which means terrifying lizard. So before 1841, no one ever heard of a dinosaur because there was no word. So what word did they use before 1841? The only word they could use is dinosaur or monster in the English language. Dragon. Thank you, sir. What did I say? Thank you. Correct me, please. Dinosaur is not the word they had. It had to be dragon or monster. Dragon or monster. So, if we used to have dinosaurs around, and with people, quite frequently, wouldn't we have some sort of writings about that? Also, I'm going to go into that part a little bit later. If we had dinosaurs still around today, we could say maybe there's a few of them left because it's not so long, 6,000 years ago. So we might still have a few left. It wouldn't be like they're at the mall. But, there still might be a few hiding in places that we don't see too often, like in the Congo or someplace in the Amazon, where there's not very many people, or the people we don't talk to and report about, or don't have cameras. But as human population increases, we tend to scare out all the dangerous creatures or kill them off. I grew up in a little town of Dickinson near the bayou, near Houston and Galveston. And their team mascot was an alligator, and they had a big one mounted on the wall. Well, I went up and down that bayou in a canoe over and over again as a child, and I never once saw an alligator. They were all killed off in that area. Well, that's what happened to dinosaurs. They're big and scary, and they killed them off. They might kill them off for meat. They might think they're a menace when they tromped through the cornfields and ruined all the corn. They might want to be a hero for the village and kill the dinosaur, kill the dragon. They might want to prove that they're superior to the dragon. Or maybe some sort of competition for the land. They're trying to harvest something here, and the dinosaur keeps eating their crop. Or maybe they might think some part of this creature is medicinal. And so they might want to cut off, like they do the horns of the rhinoceros. They go over and cut it off, and they think it's supposed to help them be healthy or virile or something. But if we had dinosaurs around with man, we should have tons of stories of dragons and monsters. Well, we do. We have tons of stories and legends of dragons and monsters, of people slaying them too, interestingly enough. Here we have Gilgamesh slaying the dragon. We have a Chinese legend of a man named Yu. After the Great Flood, Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built canals to drain the water off into the sea, helped make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshland when Yu created the new farmlands. So he drove off the dragons. Now, in Marmaduke, their chief god was a dragon. Marduk, thank you, sir. Marmaduke, that's the dog. Golly. Been watching too many cartoons, I guess. Thank you, sir. On the walls of Babylon, they've dug up some of the walls of Babylon, and on the walls they'll have lions and other real creatures, and with the real creatures there'll also be dragons. Did they have dragons in Babylon? Now, many people have heard about the issue about amalgamations and they wonder whether or not dinosaurs are amalgamations. Now, I want to look at a few things about that. First, normally when you combine two things, you can see both things in it. Here's a horse that's half horse, half zebra. And you can see the parts of the two. The donkey and the horse combined, and you get the mule. They look kind of like the two things that are added together. And then we have the mythical scimitar, which was a man and horse. Centaur. Thank you. I actually hit him to be up here helping me. Anyway, I also wanted to look real quickly at what God said about doing this. What does He say about combining animals? And here we say, "You shall keep my statutes. Thou shalt not let thy cattle gender with diverse kind. Thou shalt not sow thy field with mingled seed, neither shalt thou mingle garments mingled of linen and wool come upon thee." Now, on the garment thing, it's saying it's okay to wear a cotton shirt and a wool sweater. It's don't have a shirt that's cotton and wool in the same garment. So, anyway, I wanted to look a little bit real quickly at what Ellen White said about amalgamations, and I was hoping this would help us also see the situation about whether dinosaurs are amalgamations or not. Okay, here we go. First quote, "But if there was one sin above another which called for the destruction of the race by the flood, it was the base crime of amalgamation of man and beast, which defaced the image of God and caused confusion everywhere." So if you run across centaur, thank you, sir. I should write it down on the slide so I know what I'm saying. Thank you. Centaur, then can it be saved? Is it a child of God? I mean, that's confusing, right? Now, another statement that she made was the confused species which God did not create, which were the result of amalgamation, were destroyed by the flood. So if any of them survived the flood, they're not amalgamations. Because here she says, God destroyed them. And I'm showing you through all the stories about dinosaurs, and we've got more, that dinosaurs existed after the flood. Not a lot of them, but we didn't have a lot of recorded history for quite some time after the flood. So a lot of them have been chased off and killed, but I still think there's a few left. Now, we were talking also about amalgamating man with creatures. Scientists have already tread on this territory before the flood, and now it looks like they're there again. And as Ellen White said, if there's one sin above another that he doesn't like, it's this one. Here we have an article saying 10 ways science is using human-animal hybrids. Scary stuff. It gets worse. 150 animal-human hybrids grown in UK labs. Embryos have been produced selectively for the past 3 years, and that was written in secretly for the past 3 years. So they were secret about it at first. But after they were doing it for 3 years, they just had to brag about it. And they came out on the news in 2011. So now they've been doing it for some time, and they had 150 of these things. And they're now, 2014, 6 years old. What are these things? And this revelation came about a day after the committee of scientists warned of the nightmare Planet of the Apes scenario in which human-animal creations go too far. Goes too far. So this work is going too far. If there's any sign that you need to see that we're close to the end, this is it. Here's another one. Part human, part animal hybrid monsters are being created by scientists all over the planet. Crazed scientists all over the globe are playing God with the very building blocks of life. And you look at some of the reasons they're thinking why they should do this. One of them is they might create super soldiers, a super race, and they even say that maybe there'll come a time when there won't be any pure humans left. This is Nightmare City. It's just amazing it's gone this far. Anyway, let's go back to dragons. Alexander the Great, when he was conquering India, what is now India, in 326 BC, his soldiers were scared by great dragons that lived in caves. This is a relief from a 2nd century Roman mosaic, and it shows 2 long-necked dragons fighting, or maybe they're kissing. Here we have St. George. He slayed the dragon in 275 AD. He ended up being the martyr, the patron saint of England and Portugal. We have Beowulf slew a dragon when he was 88 years old, so I guess we're a bunch of slackers. Here's a Babylonian seal, so in a guy fighting a winged dragon. There's another one from Russia, a winged dragon. In Bulgaria, a winged dragon. Where do they get these things? In 900 AD, an Irish writer told of an animal with iron nails on its tail and a head similar to a horse. It had thick, strong legs and claws. Maybe we got a Stegosaurus. Siegfried slayed the dragon Fafnir. I mean, there's literally thousands of these stories. Marco Polo said that the emperor of China pulled his chariot with dragons. When he came back and he had the stories to tell about what he saw in China and other places, he says he couldn't say the half of it or they wouldn't believe him. The city of Nerlou, France, was named after a person who slayed a dragon. It's supposed to have had long, sharp, pointed horns on its head. Maybe it was one of these guys. Triceratops. Good answer. Native Americans drew on the walls of the Grand Canyon. And look at this picture they drew. It looks a little bit like an Edmontosaurus. Look up close. That looks kind of funny. What creature is that these Indians were drawing? There's another wide body, long neck thing. It looks a little like a turtle, but I don't know. It looks a little big for a turtle. In Ica, Peru, there's a place that's inland a bit behind some mountains. It's very arid. Actually, it's the most arid, dry place in the world. You've probably heard of this place because of the drawings you can see from the air. They have these giant images there. Well, when the conquistadors came over there in 1571, they found these rocks with strange carvings on them. Strange creatures drawn on these rocks. Here's a professor, or a Dr. Darku, or whatever his name is. He set up a museum in Lima. And it's interesting what these shapes look like. Let's look at some of these. He's got a whole bunch of these rocks. They actually made it a national treasure now, so people don't sell them off and they lose this national treasure. Look at this one. Triceratops, Stegosaurus, right on this rock. How do they know what they look like to carve these rocks? Look at this one. This one guy got his foot stuck in one of these guys. And the other guy looks like he's got a hatchet over there to go help him. Looks a little bit like our Brachiosaurus. Or maybe a Diplodocus. There's a really good picture of a Triceratops. I like this one because, you know, when they make these models of these creatures, they put some kind of skin on it. They try to make patterns or something to make it look like it's a real creature, but they have no idea what the skin looks like. This may be the first example of what the Triceratops skin actually looks like. It was carved by somebody who knew what the shape of it is. Why do you know the shape? If he knew the shape, maybe he knows what this. Maybe he saw one. Now, in 1572, an Italian scientist, Ulysses Androvas, he had found a dragon that was dead. He stuffed it and put it in a museum. So in 1572, you could go to a museum and not see a fossil of a dinosaur. You could see a real one stuffed. Now, there also have been numerous sightings of sea monsters. Viking ships frequently put the head of a sea monster on their boat. Interesting looking head. Here's another one. And look at the head of the boat. It looks like a sea monster's head. Well, between about 1500 and 1900 was the great age of sailing ships. Now, when you have a sail driving your boat, it runs through the water very quietly. Today, we have steam and diesel and gas-powered boats which make a whole lot of racket. You can hear through water for miles. We were seeing, the sailors were seeing sea monsters all the time through the great age of sailing ships. And now it's very rare to see them. Maybe we just drive them off. In Greenland, Hans Egede, missionary to Greenland, he drew this sketch of a sea monster he saw. There's another one. Bishop Eric Pontoppidan saw this sea monster in 1755. A 60-foot sea monster was seen by Captain Peter McQuay and his crew of the HMS Daedalus. In 1950s, the ship Monongahela captured and killed a sea monster. They said it had 2 blowholes, 4 swim fins, and an alligator-like head with 94 sharp teeth. A passing ship stopped and saw the creature, even bought some of the sea serpent oil. Well, the Monongahela told them, well, we got this sea serpent, we're going to bring him back, but first we have to go get some whales, because they were a whaling ship. But a couple of years later, they found a board on one of the Aleutian Islands from the Monongahela, and it never made it back. So we didn't get that creature back. In World War I, there was a U-boat captain who blew up a tanker, and as the tanker sank, it exploded. And out of the water blew a sea monster. And this was in 1915 and recorded by the German U-boat captain. And we saw in the first session, and I'll show you a little more, about they were fishing, a Japanese crew was fishing off the coast of New Zealand. That's roughly the area they were fishing in. And when they were fishing, they pulled up from 900 feet this 32-foot-long, 400,000-pound animal. It was dead, it was rotting, and it stunk. Well, they examined it, they took a few samples, and they threw it back. They were out there for business. They weren't out there to collect scientific specimens. So they threw it back, which is a terrible loss. But they did have a biologist on board. And the biologist looked at this creature and studied it quite closely with a mask on. Now, I've heard it said that this was really a type of whale. Basically, here's the type of whale they say it is. They say it's a baleen whale without the lower jaw. Well, you're going to have to bend that top snout a bunch to get it to wrap around like this one we're seeing. It could be, except here's what the biologist said it had. It had neck bones. I don't know of any whales that have neck bones. Looks a little bit like a plesiosaur. There's a variety of types of plesiosaur. This is kind of a short-necked one. This is a longer-necked one here. This is actually a type of plesiosaur also. The Japanese believed it was a plesiosaur and put it on their stamp to commemorate the 100th year of their country. In 1907, Lieutenant Colonel Perry Fawcett of the British military was mapping out the boundary between Peru and Brazil. Now, he was known as a meticulous recorder of details. When he was out there, he thought he saw a Diplodocus, which looks a little like that. And he talked to the tribesmen, and they agreed that they had seen such a creature before. And they found tracks in a trail where it went. Now, I want to talk a little bit about snakes and reptiles. There's a peculiar thing about snakes and reptiles that humans don't share. We'll grow up to a certain age, and then we quit growing up. We might grow out a little bit, but we don't grow up anymore after a certain point. But reptiles and snakes will continue to grow as long as they live. Now, there's also a strange thing that happens once you reach a certain size. Once you get to a certain size, you don't have any enemies. You know, it's sort of like, where does a 400-pound gorilla sleep? Wherever he wants. Well, creatures like reptiles and snakes, once they get really big, they don't have any enemies. Well, except man. Well, here is a 35-foot snake with a native inside it. Now, they went and took all these pictures. I don't know why they didn't try to cut the guy out, but they wanted to get a picture of him while he was still in there. Now, there was another one found in the backyard. It's a little bit bigger. This is in China. They had a security guard in the area, and, well, he ended up inside this snake. It's about 55 feet long. Wow. Now, this is not the biggest snake that's been found. No. This snake, Colonel Fawcett, also saw a 62-foot anaconda. Notice anytime they see something big, they got to shoot at it. But that's not the biggest snake. In Colombia, on the Colombia-Brazil border, in 1933, they killed a 98-foot snake with a machine gun on the Rio Negro River. He was 2 foot in diameter and 98 feet long. That's a big snake. Took 4 people, and they still couldn't lift its head up. That's a big snake. But that's not the biggest snake. There's a bigger snake. There was a 130-foot boa constrictor. Here's an article about it. I want to try to read this because I thought it was such a cool little article. Monster boa reported by terrified villagers. Luis Yuma was playing soccer in a village deep in Peru's Amazon jungle on Tuesday when he saw a black boa constrictor the size of 2 passenger buses slither by. According to Nueva Taka inhabitants, a 130-foot-long serpent was a diameter of about 15 feet. It crashed through the jungle undergrowth, felling trees and forging a ditch wide enough to drive a tractor through. Of course, everyone was terrified. They had 5 eyewitnesses to it, and the people in the village could feel the ground shake as it moved. And that was reported in 1997. I just saw this cartoon, and I just thought it was pretty funny. You know, they're looking at the wall, and they say, "What do you think this symbolizes?" Now, you're all familiar with the Loch Ness Monster. In 1933, they used dynamite, and they cut a roadbed in the side of the loch so they could drive along the loch itself. In the first year, 52 sightings were made of the Loch Ness Monster. Since then, there's been over 9,000 sightings. So let's look at a couple of those sightings. And I want to try to show you that I believe that here's a Chronosaurus, a Elasmosaurus, and a Plesiosaur, that Loch Ness Monster is a type of Plesiosaur. That's what I think. Anyway, others insist Nessie must be a Plesiosaur. One thing wrong with this theory is that plesiosaurs are believed to become extinct 70 million years ago. You see, evolutionists cannot accept that they're still around if they've been extinct for 70 million years. Now, the big flood wiped out a lot of animals maybe 4,400 years ago. A few of them could have survived. A creationist says, well, yeah, it could have happened. There could still be a few around. No big deal. But evolutionists, they look at that and they've got to say, no, it doesn't exist. Sir Arthur Grant, a veterinary student, nearly ran into the Loch Ness Monster when he was driving down the road. I guess he could crawl out. He drew this picture of what he thought the Loch Ness Monster looked like. Looks a little like a plesiosaur. The Spicer family reported seeing Nessie with a sheep in its mouth. I know, we'll stick a pen of sheep near the coast, and we'll put a bunch of cameras around there, and we'll catch him, huh? Torquil MacLeod gave this impression of the Loch Ness Monster, which looks a lot like Arthur Grant's impression. In 1987, they wanted to end the controversy. So what they did is they did Operation Deep Scan. They put side scan sonar on a whole bunch of boats. and they ran it up and down Loch Ness. The problem is the Loch Ness is about anywhere from 700 to 1,000 feet deep, and the bottom is all wrinkled up like a prune, and there's also caves all in the sides of it. Well, they didn't see anything. Another guy, he decided, well, maybe what we'll do is we'll put a motion sensor on a camera underwater. And he captured these two pictures. You look at the shape of the fins. Looks a little bit like plesiosaur fins. Here, Sandy Mancy took this picture. She had a video of this creature in America, in one of the lakes in America. We also have them over in Russia. We have this creature in a lake that they've seen out there. A huge creature that looked like a dinosaur washed up in Russia's northern coast after a storm in the Arctic. That was in 1994. It was 39 feet long. In northern island of Japan, there's a lake up there, and they have a thing called Kusi. And it's a long, black, eel-like monster. Then on the southern island, Lake Akita, they have another creature, and they have a statue out there by the lake. It looks something like that. But if y'all want proof positive, I got it for you. I got it. Here is a stuffed plesiosaur found in Lake Erie. It wasn't stuffed before they found it. They found it, and they actually had a hook in its head when they did an x-ray of it. But they caught it. They noticed there was a little pouch under its face that's now in the Creation Evidence Museum. The real McCoy. We have one. You can't say they don't exist today because there it is. In 1970, this creature washed up on the shore in Scituate, Massachusetts. It was dead and rotting. It was 50 feet long. They couldn't have this health disaster on their beach, so they took dynamite and blew it back in the water. I guess they're really not after evidence, are they? It's like they're out to destroy the evidence. In 1925, this guy washed up on the beach in California. It was up near it's south of San Francisco. I forget the name of it. Monterey. I believe it's in that area, yes. Santa Cruz. In a recent 1989 Skin Diver magazine, they replayed it and showed some pictures of it. You see the guy in the background standing there with his rifle. I guess he was afraid it was going to move. There's another picture, you see him better. And here is a description by a local person, it's a doctor in the area. He said, "My examination of the monster was quite thorough. It had no teeth. Its head is large and its neck a full 20 feet long. It's not a baleen whale. The body is weak and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. With a bill like it possesses, it must have lived on herbage and undoubtedly inhabited a swamp. I would call it a type plesiosaur." Another witness, Judge W.R. Springer of Santa Cruz, felt the creature was from a prehistoric age. He talked about its 2-foot short flippers and its head swam high above the water. So they're describing a creature they found. Modern creature they found after the flood. Lake Champlain, it had a creature. I mean, these things are all over the world. In any large body of water, they've seen some kind of big creature in the water. Here's a picture of Champ, they called it, from Lake Champlain. See, we're seeing creatures over here, over in New Zealand, over in California, in Massachusetts. They're just all over the place. How come scientists aren't in on this? The reason, really, it's simple. If they have evidence like this, it'll ruin all their doctorates. And they'll just be a laughingstock because they've been wrong all these years and they're not going to even look at it anymore. It's just, they actually hide evidence. In the basement of the Smithsonian is evidence right now, today, that if it were released, it would make them look bad. Over and over again, there's hidden evidence, destroyed evidence. When they make finds, if they find something that disagrees with what they like, they just ignore it. It's an outlier. In Baton Rouge, they had a student in Louisiana. He went over to Africa. And in Kenya, they had all these stories of Kangamato. And Kangamato was this fearsome creature that if you didn't bury your dead deep enough, would dig them up and eat them. They had leathery wings, but it wasn't a bat. Now, out west, there's some Union soldiers, so the time frame, we can kind of guess roughly when that is. They found this very large pterodactyl. And then this other one to the right, I don't even know what that is. It's also got leathery wings. A vulture, but a vulture with leather wings? I don't know what that is. So what do our kids get when they get a book about dinosaurs? They get a book like this and they shows dinosaurs and says, let's read about dinosaurs. Millions of years ago. Does it say maybe millions of years ago? Or we theorized millions of years ago? No, it just says millions of years ago, dinosaurs. And that's what your kids start off with hearing. So I want to tell you, whenever you hear millions of years ago, you just think, long ago in a land far away, because you're hearing a fairy tale. They made it up. They don't know that. Come now, let us reason together, saith the Lord. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. So what have we learned? Evolution predicts the creatures are getting larger and more complex, and that's not happening. Bible science is being shown correct. Dinosaurs are mentioned in the Bible. Many dinosaurs have existed recently. Evolution must have a huge separation between man and dinosaurs, and they don't exist. Well, my next session, which will be Wednesday night, will be on Darwin. I'm going to look at his theory head on. I'm going to look at what is Darwinism. I'm going to look at the difference between micro and macroevolution, and I'm going to look at the ascent of man, Java Man, Piltdown Man, Lucy, and some others. Could you bow your heads with me for a minute? Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the great creation you have put us in. We look forward to your coming soon. In Yeshua's name, amen. I should mention to you, I say Yeshua because when Jesus was on the earth, nobody ever called him Jesus. It's a small thing, I know. But anyway, I just wanted to explain why I said that. Thank you for coming tonight. Oh, yeah. He kept